then beginning in the late 90s and 2000, 2001, in the late 90s, there was a huge, massive eviction epidemic here, particularly in this neighborhood in the Mission District in San Francisco, and a lot of people living and working here formed sort of an opposition, and a lot of groups came together in the Missionary Displacement Coalition, and I was involved in that, and I did various things. I work as a writer, and one of the things I did for the Missionary Displacement Coalition was to do a report, wrote up a report. We were particularly around this particular neighborhood, which was undergoing, it used to be, this neighborhood, the Northeast Mission, sort of was built up around 1890, and there was a huge, right up here, like a half a block away it begins, is a large industrial district that was still had manufacturing going on up through the early 90s, and it was a source of jobs. The neighborhood at that time was about 60% Latino, low-income working class households, and this was really the main source of better paying working class jobs, because San Francisco is predominantly the service sector, so most of the jobs would be in hotels, working as housekeepers or whatever, or in restaurants as dishwashers and servers and so forth. And so, and these tend to be low-paying jobs. So the manufacturing industries that were here were paying better. And so what was happening was that real estate speculators during the housing bubble were coming in, buying up inexpensive industrial land, building expensive condos that, on this property. And the thing about that is, another thing they were doing, they'd buy up a warehouse that's vacant, and then they would sometimes illegally convert it into office space. And the thing about office space and residential space is that it's a higher value kind of space than industrial. And so the sort of blue-collar employers are being driven out of the city, and therefore the jobs were being driven out. Of course, some of the deindustrialization occurred through flight to the third world. Right up the street, there's a huge 4-story curtain wall building that was for many years a Best Foods mayonnaise factory. And in 1992, the company moved the entire operation to Guatemala. But anyway, that was a fight that we had going on, and over displacement and rising rents and evictions and so forth in that period that I was involved in. And ultimately, the indigenous sort of radical left and its working class supporters here, and they really were defeated. We were not really able to prevent the displacement that's continued to take place. But I got involved with a couple of other libertarian socialists in creating a community land trust because the problem was, a lot of the left here, their strategy was kind of liberal. They wanted to just kind of make the zoning more strict to prevent the developers to come in from taking over the properties and requiring them to provide more affordable housing and so on. But zoning has never really been able to be used that way. It's really to protect the capitalists, not to protect the people. And so my feeling about that was we had to really gain control of the land and the buildings. And so that is to say the residents, people living here, had to gain control of their buildings. So we came up with this idea of a community land trust that would acquire buildings and convert them with tenants in them. And we would then work with those tenants, organize the tenants, to convert their buildings into cooperatives. So they would own the buildings. And it's been very, very difficult. We, through a number of years of work, we did ultimately have a victory where there was a group of, this is actually in Chinatown, where there was a group of working class Chinese immigrants who, the building was going to be torn down and they refused to move, and we worked with them, and they, through organizing in their community, politically defeated the owner and forced them to sell us the building. And so now this is now 3 or 4 years later. 4 years later, we've converted the building to a cooperative, so we have one victory. But anyway, that's what I've been doing.